So I recently had the privilege to spend 2.5 days with some wonderful human beings from all over the country talking about belonging and inclusion. And I think that's such a huge topic today, especially in our climate, everything that's happening in the world. And, how is belonging and inclusion? What does it look like in the workplace? What does it look like in the community? How is it impacting our families? Such a needed topic, such a wonderful thing to be focused on as an organization. And, I, gosh, there was so much great dialogue at this meeting, very focused on making an impact in the lives of employees and families. And one of the things that I got really excited about is that my guest today, this is her space. This is what she does. And I saw Faith Rivera at a an event through Heart Profit in Frisco, Texas, back in August, and I immediately connected with her because she is a wonderful human being, and I asked her to come on, be my guest, and talk about the importance of creating space in places for people to, be themselves and the impact of stress on the brain and how can we be better for ourselves? How can we be better for our community? And so, Faith, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here and I'm excited about our conversation. How are you?
Yes. Thank you so much, Jason. I've been looking forward to our conversation. I feel like such a great way to end off the work week on a Friday is having a conversation about stress and how it impacts our lives. Because the world is stressful. We can't really fully get away from that, but we can build coping skills, and that's one of my big passions. So yeah, thank you so much for having me, and really excited to dive into our conversation today.
Yeah, could you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. So, hello, everyone. I'm Faith. I am so excited to be here today, and my path is the kind of the non-traditional one. I have owned my own consulting practice now for a little over 2.5 years, but it went full time last year. And my path to entrepreneurship was really one with twists and turns. I grew up in a household where my dad, as a single parent, was an entrepreneur, and that was really what I grew up knowing. But being the oldest and the only girl, and being stubborn, I had to kind of figure out my own path and my own way. And went to school, got my degree in human development, really a focus on child psychology, and then went on to get my master's degree in program development and higher education. So had all of the technical and professional knowledge to be able to really go out into the workplace to understand how people work, how to create effective programs that really bring impactful and lasting change. And then through the different roles that I've had, I've really gotten to put that into practice. So, have been a part of a couple from the ground up initiatives over the last decade. Helped build up a college and career mentoring program for middle, high school, and college students right after college. Was able to really start my career off early in the nonprofit and education space, and really started to create a passion within me for creating new things, for building up programs and initiatives with the right intentions, and helping to ensure that behind everything that we do, that there's really strong strategy and intentionality. That's one of my biggest things, is whenever I do something or I'm working with clients to do something, like, how are we doing it intentionally and sustainably, not just building something up that's going to go away in a couple months, but how do we build something for the long term. Then, after graduating with my master's, was able to kind of jump ship and go somewhere else, following my husband for his medical school journey. Went down to the public health department in the county neighboring where I was living, and helped create a early childhood initiative for families across not just Tarrant County, but it eventually spread into a regional wide initiative in North Texas. And through that, really got the opportunity to work with all different kinds of programs and partners that support families with young children, the business community, anyone and everyone in the nonprofit space, government agencies. And that role just kind of evolved into project management, grant writing, and really set the fire in me to help start my own business, to really take what I had learned through working with so many different programs and initiatives and say, okay, how can I use my skills, my knowledge to impact a larger audience? And that's really what I've been doing for almost the last 2 years full time.
Wow, I absolutely love that. Um, Being intentional, being sustainable. I love those words. They're powerful, and I know that. I mean, look, I've seen you speak, and I know that it's your purpose. It's why you're here, and I just love that you're showing up the way you do. So thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for doing that. That was back in August when I saw you speak, and you gave a talk about stress on the brain, and we've had this date on the calendar. It seems like maybe a couple of months. Um,
I think
so,
so.
I've been looking forward to it. And a couple of weeks ago, um, I saw an article from Forbes magazine, and I did a post on LinkedIn. But the title is, I'm just going to read some stuff here. It says, "Why managers may have a bigger mental health impact than your therapist." And I was like, wow, I mean, it's huge,
Yeah.
right? Like we spend so much time at work. Um, I mean, if you have a therapist, it's once a week or once every couple
Yeah.
of weeks, or right, there's a cadence to it, but not every single day,
Mhm.
most of your day. And it's huge. And there's some very good data points in here, but I wanted to bring up a couple because this is your space. And I want to get your thoughts on it. Um, Work stress negatively impacts employees' home life. 71% of employees say that that's how they feel, right? 64% it impacts their well-being, and 62% said it impacts their relationships. I mean, their spouses, their children, their friends. That's breaks my heart,
Yeah.
and it's real, right? Like, I mean, they surveyed. This is not like in some one town. It's 3,400 employees in
Wow.
10 countries, including the US.
Okay.
Stress. Um, there's another statistic here that says at the end of work, 43% of employees are often or always exhausted, and 78% say that stress negatively impacts their work performance. And I heard you talk about this. How can you share some of your knowledge with our audience, please?
So I think sometimes we as people forget that we can't just compartmentalize our lives. How we show up when we're being our authentic selves is going to transpire across the different areas. When I do a lot of work within the stress management and burnout prevention space, I use the NIH, the National Institute of Health's 8 dimensions of wellness model. And it tells us that we have 8 dimensions of our lives that are interconnected and allow us to use our values, our time, our gifts, our energy. And if we're not pouring into each of those areas of our lives, that's really how we start feeling not just stress, but kind of getting towards the point of burnout. If we're not adequately involved in all the different areas of our lives, then we feel it internally and then our bodies and so on. But vocational is only one of those areas of our lives. And so, even though, yes, work is a huge part of our lives with how many hours a week we spend,
Mhm.
how a lot of us pay for anything and everything in our lives, it is just one aspect of our lives. But with that being said, when you're stressed, you're going to show up to work differently, or you're going to show up home differently after a day of work. And, to your point where you talked about so many people mentioning that they're spending more time with their boss or their manager than their therapist, or their boss is directly impacted on their mental health. I've seen so many articles and resources that talk about that. The relationship between an employee and their manager really is one of the number one factors on if a employee stays in that organization or not. People want to feel valued, they want to feel respected, they want to feel heard, and a manager is often one that directly has the ability to make that happen or not. That's one of the reasons that I've loved getting involved with Heart Profit, because I know that is one of the things that they're really focused on, is helping us to bring heart and compassion back into the workplace. And I really do think it's up to each of us individually. It's a societal issue, but it's also us as people. There are things within our jobs, within our lives, that we don't have control over, and we can't figure out ways to control them or change them. And sometimes I know control is an area that I personally struggle with. It's one of my personal saboteurs. And so when I feel out of control about a situation, I get really stressed. And oftentimes, what a lot of research will show us, or a lot of even counselors will share with us, is when a situation is causing us stress or anxiety, it's kind of taking a step back and looking at it from a more objective place where we can, to try to separate out the emotion of it, but also to calm down our nervous system. If we are reacting in a place of high anxiety, high stress, fight, flight, or freeze, we're not able to use those higher level thinking parts of our brain. We're responding from survival instead of trying to thrive. And so
Mm.
that would be one of probably my biggest areas of recommendations, whether you're a manager, whether you're an employee, whether you're showing up at home, however you're showing up, is take a second before responding to anything, whether it's a text message, a comment from a spouse or a child, a comment from your supervisor or your staff. We're so quick to respond that we're not normally responding with the right part of our brain.
Yeah. Gosh, that and you used to take a minute, and we hear corporate language talk about, hey, let's talk about mental health, let's practice mindfulness. I mean, and the reality is I think some companies are getting there, but at the end of the day, the whole point of a company is to put money in the bank, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
to drive revenue and drive profit dollars. But I mean, this is like a vehicle, though, that can improve your
Hmm.
profitability, that can improve. And it's like you said, Heart Profit, Stacy's doing a ton of work in that space, and she's actually scheduled to be on with me in the near future. So I'm excited.
Yay.
I'm excited about that conversation as well. But I talk to managers it's funny because we talk about time management,
Hmm.
and I say, hey, put like 10 minutes on your calendar, you know, before lunch, after lunch, or during lunch, to remind yourself to go outside and just take in a fresh breath of air,
Yeah.
uh, some sun on your face, right? And it's funny because, like, the response is, well, I don't have time for that. I'm so busy. And I'm like, no, you're missing the point. Like,
Hmm.
just disconnecting for 5 minutes or 10 minutes is powerful. And, I was following up with a specific employee, and he's like, well, I haven't done it yet. I'm like, you do it. And, "Oh, I haven't done it yet. Do it." And then finally he's like, fine, I'm going to do it for you. Just because you won't, just so you'll stop asking me. And the response was, oh my God, why haven't I done this sooner?
Yeah.
Right? Because to your point about the levels of stress, we start to make poor decisions. We don't think clearly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insanely crazy. So, what do you do when you meet with clients? Do you walk them through exercises? Do you have any nuggets that you can drop?
Yes. So I had the pleasure and honor of going through a training program a couple of months ago through Positive Intelligence. And that goes over kind of the 10 main saboteurs that we as humans have. Everyone has the judge. And as the name implies, it's how you judge yourself, judge others, judge situations. But then there's nine others that are kind of ranked in strength based on your life, your experiences, and what you struggle with. And our saboteurs often are things that at one point when we were children were strengths, but then through stress, trauma, life have become things that can hold us back. And I share all that to say, when I bring on work with new clients, that is something I've started having them do at the beginning of our work together, whether they're coming on board for a very short-term project, or they want my help more long-term, or even I'll be mindful of it when we're in conversations and I hear certain key phrases or key terms. But I think when we as people understand what our innate strengths are and what our innate struggles are, it allows us to reframe things from a different manner. So, for example, for me, I kind of mentioned already, my controller is really, really strong. I grew up in a household where I did not have a lot of control of things. My parents got divorced when I was really young. I became caretaker at 7, 8 years old of my younger brothers. I was responsible for helping my dad around the house. And so over time, I developed that need for control, or at least thinking I had control, because I really don't. And that's something that as an adult, now as a business owner, as a wife, as a leader in different areas, that's something I have to be really mindful of how I show up. And when I'm in conversation with other people, are my responses based on my need for control, or my thinking I need control, or are my responses really based on what's best for that situation? And so I try to work with my clients to help them understand where those pitfalls could be and start practicing identifying it. Because our brains work on autopilot 99% of the time. And I mean, how many times have we realistically driven home from the grocery store or work and like not even actively thought about any of the turns that we made? I do it more often than I want to admit. I'm like, do I even remember what song was on the radio while I was driving? Probably not. But when we can kind of shift to a more conscious thought process and really identify what is going on in our brains, we have more power to take control back and to be able to adjust our thoughts and really go into that strength mindset and strength part of our brain.
Wow. I absolutely can identify with the going from point A to point B and not knowing what turn I took, what road I
Yeah.
took. Yeah, yeah. And listening to your journey as a child, I'm certain that that I align with some of the things you talked about. Being a military child, we moved
Yeah.
around so much, and I always felt like I was just along for the ride. Like
Yeah.
I just, it's time to pack up, time to go, time to get new friends, time to go to a new school, and that can be stressful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And so you've worked in the nonprofit space prior to this, right?
Yes.
And that was
That's where
all
I was
part,
before I
yeah,
came to owning my own practice.
yeah. And so what's your mission? What do you hope to accomplish?
So, whichever clients I work with, whether they're businesses or nonprofits, I always say that I was put on this earth to build capacity for change
Mm.
and really help people have and be the change that they want to see in the world. And so that is really at the core of everything that I do personally and professionally through my business. I want to help people develop the skills, develop the knowledge to be able to be who they want to be and need to be to show up in those different areas of their lives.
What's the biggest hurdle you see with organizations?
So I would say oftentimes it's people, and that might sound weird, but we as people bring so many different layers of baggage into whatever work we're doing, whether it's through the nonprofit space or through businesses. And we are our own worst enemies most of the time. I learned that very quickly in entrepreneurship. There wasn't anyone to tell me what to do. If I didn't want to wake up early to get to work or go work out, I wasn't going to. And then I had to respond to myself later on for why I didn't do those things. But I think so many of us have limiting beliefs or are saboteurs that we don't even realize are there all the time. And um, people really are their own worst enemy. And then I would say, specifically calling out some of the work within the nonprofit world is one of the things that I see a lot, especially for startup nonprofits or nonprofits trying to scale, is they put all their eggs in one basket. And in the
Mm.
business world, we're always taught diversify your funding, diversify your
Yeah.
funding. Well,
Yeah.
nonprofits really need to do that too. And so those are some of my favorite conversations to have with nonprofit clients of like, okay, yeah, we can apply for grants, but those are a long-term strategy. What else can we do? What funders can we get engaged or donations or events? because really nonprofits are businesses too. They just have to give back more to the community and their tax structure is a little bit different, but just helping people with their limiting beliefs in multiple different facets, both personally and professionally.
Wow. Yeah, I think the whole world could use some help with our limiting beliefs.
Yes.
It's so I just smiled when you said that the biggest hurdle is, people, ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because um, you know, traffic is traffic, the workspace is the workspace. Nothing can, I mean, it's an environment that is in motion.
Hmm.
And however, like my anxiety starts on the inside. It's not
Yeah.
external,
Yeah.
right? Like something can happen and there could be four people in the car and four different experiences to what just happened.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So how do you what do you do to help people kind of, because I would imagine that when you go into space, people are like, oh, she's going to tell me I've been doing things wrong. Uh, like all this self-judgment, right? Like, like how to, because look, we're humans,
Yeah.
we're complex, we're messy, like life is messy.
Yep.
you know, how do you help people, put them at ease and say, you know what, look, look.
So I always try to start off with kind of a level set of like, I'm not here to judge you. I am not here to tell you what you've been doing wrong. My goal, my job is to help you succeed and to grow. Which is part of why I like doing that saboteur assessment because then I'm not telling people where they're struggling. Like the assessment, I can blame it on the tool, not on me. But again, I think when people have that knowledge, it can be a little freeing. I've had two new client meetings this week alone where we talked about the saboteur assessment. I was like, was anything shocking to you? And they're like, nope, this resonates. And so I think it kind of relieves it a little bit because
Yeah.
then I can come in and be like, oh, so and so, your judge is showing again, or your controller's rearing their ugly head, and kind of make light of it a little bit
Yeah.
so that people aren't as hard on themselves.
Mm.
And one thing I really try to do is also be their cheerleader, not just be like, okay, I'm the strategy coach, or, I'm trying to get you from A to B, but also help in every step of the process, like cheering them on and saying, like, wow, we got 3 grants submitted this month, or wow, you were able to think of something new for your business that you hadn't thought of before that you're really excited, or you built a new relationship or partnership. Just helping people to remember that all wins need to be celebrated, whether they're big or small. And yes, some are going to have more financial or logistical implications than others. But I think it's really easy to skip over the good and only look at the bad. And so trying to help people remember, whether it's my friends, my clients, even myself, remember that every day there's things to celebrate, there's things to be grateful for. I start off every day with my 7 gratitudes because that puts me in a good headspace of, even if my gratitude, because I slept bad, is that I had coffee this morning and that gave me energy. Like, I think reminding people and ourselves that there are things to be grateful for, even in the midst of stress, trauma, chaos, whatever. There's things to be grateful for. And that oftentimes will remove some of our stress levels too, when we're not always thinking about what's ahead, but trying to be more present on what is going on right now.
Yeah, I really love that. I mean, you said a lot there, and humor helps bring some things down. So
Yeah.
I love the fact that you're having fun with your clients. And gratitude is tremendous. It really is because it puts things into perspective, right?
Yeah.
I mean, things could be a lot worse than they are. Um, and again, life is messy, work is messy. We we make decisions based on information that we have, but really broadening that perspective and saying, hey, let's look at the big picture. What's really important here? And you can,
Hmm.
you know, and I love the work that you're doing because you're asking people to stop focusing on business to focus on themselves and their team and some mental health.
Yeah.
But the reality is that it's going to help them be more productive. It's going to help
Yep.
them be more successful. and people are going to show up. And I just love it. I love the work you're doing.
Thank you. Every day is something new, and I'm grateful every day for the work that I get to do and people who trust me to be a part of their lives and their businesses. Um, I can honestly say each day I get excited when I look at my calendar and see what's on the agenda for the day.
Yeah. So tell me about the name of your company
Oh, I
and
love this.
and the story behind it.
Yeah. So Alo Civitas is Latin for nourishing communities. And
Mm,
as I mentioned in the very beginning when I was doing my introduction, intentionality is something that is really important to me. And so when I was creating the company and figuring out, I didn't want to just be like Faith Rivera's consulting company because that's boring. I wanted it to have more meaning. So then it's also a good conversation starter because people are like, what is Alo Civitas? So, with the Latin phrase meaning nourishing communities, that's really what we're doing. Whether it's a business, a nonprofit, training an actual community, project management for a grant, like everything that we do is to build support around our communities, to build that change within our communities. And communities means a lot of different things depending on who you're working with. But you know, the name also ties then to our logo that brings in a tree to show that growth and that nourishment. So, my branding person did a really good job on that because it ties it all together that we're really helping people grow, change, and to nourish.
yeah, I really like that and how it does kind of flow into the community. And that does mean different things to different people.
Sure.
Years ago, I started, work is a group of people that hold specific positions that do specific
Yep.
tasks to make the wheels keep turning, the gears connecting, right?
Yeah.
To in this machine kind of way. But it bringing that people aspect into it and really starting to see people as uh Faith, who lives in Ohio, who went to
Hmm.
school in North Texas and
Yeah.
was raised by her father, and bringing that human element in and going, oh, by the way, she helps us with these processes and procedures
Yeah.
in the throughout the day. It really starts to humanize things, and it's so important. um so a few years ago, I started reframing it for myself, saying that when I get done interacting with Faith, my hope is that the people in Faith's lives get a better version of her,
Yeah.
right? To think about that ripple,
Yeah.
whether it's the person you connect with at the grocery store on your way home from work, or your husband, or your
Yeah.
children.
Yeah.
And for me, all the stuff that you do, gosh, it takes me back to about 12 years ago. I was so consumed with the workspace under a, a tremendous amount of pressure
Yeah.
to deliver results. And I didn't even know that I was um, taking my family for granted. Like, like I would just,
Wow.
it was work, 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 work all the time. And I couldn't turn it off. And it took my wife looking at me and saying, I'm leaving and I'm taking the kids.
Mm.
And I felt like at that very moment, I hit a brick wall
Yeah.
and we had to make some decisions. And I'm happy to say that we've been married for almost 23 years.
Oh, wow.
But it took some time to repair,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because it just, you have to prioritize things. And we spend such a short period on this brown ball that we call Earth. Um, and yeah, and it just, work. Yes, we do. We all have to pay our bills and afford the things we want in life.
Yeah.
But those little kids at home that get a version of me, I want them to grow up and, be good versions of themselves. And I can't do that if I'm stressed out all the time.
Yep.
Yeah, man. Sorry, I was having a moment there.
No, that's
You
okay.
took me back to uh, one of my defining pivotal moments in life.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
important to reflect on those and to remind ourselves, right? Like you said, we're only on this earth for a short time, and uh, it sometimes days, weeks, months go by, and if you're not intentionally thinking about what's going on, time just passes. And I think sometimes people forget that work is just that. It's work. It's not all of your life. It's just a part of your life.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that I relaunched my podcast and it's called Lead with Your Heart. Because I do think that there's this global movement. There's people that are just showing up like yourself all around the world, and it's being noticed. And again, thank you for showing up the way you do because we need you in this world. And I do think that companies are seeing that, right? Like, I was talking to a manager not too long ago, and we were talking about resumes and how's the hiring going, and one of the responses was is that look, uh, applicants today they don't want to work because they've got all these you know 3 months at this job, 5 months at this job, 6 months and you don't see people where they hold steady jobs anymore. And I said, well, do you think that it's they really don't want to work? Like, you think that they
Yeah.
fill out an application, go through the interview process, hoping that they quit or get fired?
No.
I don't know a single soul that does that,
Yeah.
right? And so then when you start to peel the layers back and go, well, why? I ask why a lot, by the way.
Yeah. I do too.
Like I want to, because I want to understand. It's like in my nature, and um, it's maybe listen, uh, I'm not a genius, but maybe it is the environment that they haven't found a place where they feel like they belong.
Yeah.
And I think that corporate, I think businesses are waking up to that, saying, look, I've got to adapt. This isn't, you know, 2010 anymore. It's not 2018 anymore. Um, we're going into 2025 in a short period of time here, that the world is a different place. And these things have always been important, but they're probably more important now than ever. And there is this movement, and I think that people are feeling it.
Yeah, and even when you think about our needs as humans, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Hmm.
belonging is lower down on the totem pole than self-actualization, where you are your best and truest self. And so if you're not in an environment where you feel like you have a supportive community, you're not going to be able to show up as your best self. And that's both in the home environment and in the work environment. But you can be a little bit more selective sometimes in your work environment than in your home environment, especially based on if you're living with family or, interacting with family, because we don't get to choose the families that we're born into. And so you're completely right that people need a job, but there's also a lot of jobs out there. So if they don't like your job, they're going to go somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you're in organizations or working with groups, do you see that there's a need for a generation gap? Is there like this disconnect? Because we've got what, 5 generations in the workplace, I think, four,
Yeah, 4 or 5.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, from boomers to Gen Xers to
Yeah.
millennials to Gen Z. I
Yeah.
mean,
And Alpha will be joining soon. Some of them
yes,
are turning 18 in a couple of years.
that's
Whew.
crazy.
Yeah.
I know that is crazy. So do you come across that, or is everybody pretty much engaged?
So, so yes, I do think there are some differences based in generations, and each generation has different values and ways that they show up based on experiences that they had as a whole. And with some of the younger generations like millennials and Gen Z, they really want authenticity and they want transparency. And those aren't necessarily qualities that have been valued by other generations. Not saying that they weren't there, but as a group,
Yeah.
those values weren't top of line. And you're even seeing it with how a lot of Gen Z individuals and millennials purchase. Social media influencers are not the same way that they were 10 years ago because a lot of people are calling out. They don't want to see the girl on TikTok who has 17 layers of makeup. Like they want to see the people who are in their sweatpants just going about their workout routine, right? And so I do think that different generations value different things. And it is important for managers and employers to realize. But also at the end of the day, if you're more willing to ask questions than to judge,
Mm.
you're going to be able to find common ground because at the end of the day, we're all people. We all want to be seen. We all want to be valued. We all want to be heard. We all want to be a part of a community, even if the way in which we do that is slightly different. So ask questions. Don't just assume things. See ways that you can connect with people versus identifying your differences and treat people with respect. And most of the time, they will do that back for you.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of leadership development is be curious,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Sometimes when you say ask questions, and I have to, peel the layers back a little bit because it's like, don't interrogate them. Be curious.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Oh, geez, such wonderful stuff. So to be cognizant of if you're being respectful of your time and the listener, um, if somebody wanted to connect with you, Faith, what's the best place?
Sure. So I would say probably the two best ways to get in touch with me or to find me is first and foremost on LinkedIn. I always love connecting with people on LinkedIn and just shoot me a message saying you heard me on the podcast, or through my website, which is alocivitas.com. You can see all that I do. There's a way in there that you can book a virtual coffee chat with me, which is just a 30-minute chat. I always love connecting and hearing people's stories. Even if I am not someone that can support you in what you need, I am a connector and will connect you with anyone and everyone that I can. So would love to be able to connect with listeners either through virtual coffee chat or through LinkedIn.
Yeah, I love that. And we did that, right?
We
I
did.
saw you speak, and then we had a virtual coffee chat, which led to this conversation.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So I'll put all those links in the show notes for people to have
Awesome.
access to. What's one thing that you would leave the listener with that can be impactful for their own mental health, or those that they're with, those that are in their space?
Wherever you are, be fully present there. We're going into the holiday season. There's going to be 17,000 things fighting for our attention. But when you're with your family, be with your family. Put your phone on, do not disturb, leave it in the other room.
Mm.
The holidays will come and go very fast. Be present with your family. When you're at work for however many hours that is, be present. Don't be scrolling social media or worrying about what's going on at home. Even if that can be hard, be fully present wherever you are in those different spaces, because that also helps our mental health. When we're thinking about everything going on in our lives, our minds are racing, our anxiety goes up, our stress levels go up. But if we can be fully present in the project or the person that's right in front of us, we can be more fully open to conversation and connection.
Mm. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.